Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So the occasion of spending time together, this retreat, it's kind of specialized, and that's important to create some boundaries so that one can deconstruct in peace and sort of fall apart a little bit, maybe. Things come to the surface that need to be felt, digested and chewed over and released. And through that, gaining strength, with patience, resilience, equanimity, and all that comes forth whenever we are able to find the time and occasion to establish presence. When you establish presence, however faltering that may be, however, incomplete they may be, it's always incomplete until you've completed your work, as it were. So most of it's being present with what arises, and naturally the focus tends to be on what's arising, on the important or the pressing or the disappointing or the uncertain, nagging stuff. And it's quite a practice to be able to just put that on pause, an act of faith, in fact, and not go into doing, but into pausing and begin to discern the quality of stress, uncertainty, incompletion that's there. It doesn't mean that things are necessarily always anguished, but they're unresolved because conditioned life is unresolved. There's nothing wrong with you particularly, just that conditioned are dukkha, which means they're unresolved, incomplete, always rolling on to the next possibility, which creates the next possibility, which creates the next obstacle, which creates the next thing we have to manage to get past that, so that there'd be a possibility that we could do this or that, and it just goes on like that. It's like a kind of an obstacle course or a maze that you travel through, and the wise person begins to recognize, oh, this is not about getting to the end of the maze. This is about learning through this process the skills and the balance that lift you out of the maze. You're no longer in it. You're kind of not immersed in it. You're not driven in it. You're not rushing along in it. So this is conditioned life. Is like this. So the sign of dukkha, and the dukkha it's called the direct dukkha, which is painful, dukkha, and there's the dukkha, which is the sabhava dukkha, which is like this, the viparinama dukkha, which means the fact that things tend to disintegrate. And there's the sankhata dukkha, which means the kind of suffering and stress we get out of not being able to manage that experience, not be able to cope with it. And unfortunately, well, the way it is we tend to get conditioned into a person who's trying to make it all meet, make it all work. You know, so sort of the person is bonded to squaring a circle, which, you know, to sweeping the sand off the beach. It's not going to happen. You just keep ironing the sea. It's not going to ever get straight. You know, this may seem like, well, all life is a waste of time. Not really. It means that in this process you do, you know, what you call the conditioned practice, which is practicing tidying, clearing, you know, doing the skillful more skillfully, with more poise, more balance, more resources. And so this is immensely for one's conditioned welfare and for the welfare of others. And this itself is a, you know, it's a major practice that we participate in. I do this whenever I can. You know, kind of like often just doing menial jobs around the monastery because I don't you know, I don't really mind what it is. Actually, it's just, you know, heaping piles of bricks, that's fine. Sweeping the yard, that's fine. Doing the washing up, that's fine. It's, you know, I don't have a big identity issue around these things because you're not trying to make a person out of it or expect praise or reward or, you know, fantastic performance in it. It's just you do the doing with mindfulness and with a sense of clarity, and, you know, and naturally when we meet challenges, things that are not turning up on time, things people aren't cooperating, things that break down, errors in your own judgment, you know, mistakes when you got a bit upset or distraught, or kind of said something you shouldn't have said. So you're meeting all this stuff, and then, okay, right, how did that happen? You know, and so you're kind of learning mindfulness on the run, as it were. You're learning restraint through just the bumper car process, where you just go bash around and finally get it. How you have to moderate your intentions and your energies, yeah, and your goal orientation and your judgments of other people and your assessments of yourself, and the way to kind of keep all these quiet. Wait a minute, let's not lock onto any of this stuff. This is all the sankharas. These are all the created conditions. These are the perceptions. These are the volitional forces, you know, faltering, doubtful, reluctant, driving, urgent, compulsive, you know, uncertain. These are sankharas. And you get to sort of purifying those, but also by purifying, you don't only purify them not in abstract, but by, you know, by running them out and handling them as they arise. That's the master practice. You know, rather than mopping up the mess afterwards, or which is certainly, yeah, has to be done, and aiming better the next time, which has to be done. But at the same time, you're also handling it as it's going on. This is a daily life mindfulness practice with what arises. So this is then you're being it's the pure development of parami, which I've mentioned a few times. And this is how you learn these these factors of that strengthen, guide, guard, smooth, soothe, sustain, restrain the citta. You're building them in. This is, you can just keep considering this is really what your life is about. It doesn't mean it's separate from, you know, doing your duties, but it's doing your duties with that perspective in mind. This is going to, you know, what's going to be strengthened in this. You know, what's going to be challenged in this? How can I meet this one? And so this requires a certain quality of faith, you know, which means faith to move into what we don't quite know, opening. Faith is not the same as belief, which is belief is, you know, imagining something already and creating that as a certainty. Faith is the ability to move into the unknown, the not clear yet, with a certain sense of just gather. Because to do that, you can't look around you for the certainties because they're not there yet. That's what faith means. But you look where you can find the certainties back in your own citta. This is why faith is a cardinal, an opening for practice. You know? You want to, because you don't want to just go through life getting by, doing the same old, what you've done, you know, rerunning it. You want to have something that possibilities where you have to open to the unknown, because what this does is it has to send you back to your citta. And this is one way in which our extension into conditions, extension into the conditioned realm, the same, if you're doing it with wisdom and with proper attention, your extension into the conditioned world also extends you back, if you like, into your own heart. Because the first thing is, well, because there isn't, you don't know. So you have to, okay, let's just be more careful, be more mindful. You know, an example, I was talking about signs the other day, and as you're well aware, when you go in a highway or a street, which cars and trucks drive along, it's full of signs, speed signs, warning signs. There's often white lines down the middle of the road or yellow lines down the middle of the road, lights, bumpers, and don't do this, do that, 5 of these, 60 miles an hour. This, you know, there's limits and things telling you, there's a little arrow this way, you know, 500 meters ahead, it's go left, and you know, so, and you know, this is for bicycles, and this is for trucks, and this is for cars, and this is, you know, this kind of stuff all lined up. And so I think the streets get quite cluttered, and I think for some reason, in some towns, they said, "What happens if you take all of that out? Take all the lines, all the signs out of the road. So, person driving a car drives down this road and think, what? And they've got no signs at all. What's, there's no demarcations for pedestrians. It's just a corridor of asphalt, you know." And they said the amazing thing was the number of accidents drops because everybody has to don't know what they're going. They've just got to really look around and what on earth is going on here. So they're super conscious, super mindful, because the unknown drives them back into their own citta. Yeah. And so you've really got to look around. And which way, I don't know, watch out for that. You know, maybe drives more slowly. It slows people down. Which is interesting, isn't it? Because all this stuff, the signs are there supposedly to make things safer. I think it's a good idea. I don't know, but it's quite interesting. Because in a way, all the signs and devices, they take our intelligence away from us, don't they? They take your wisdom away from you, because they take your attention, they take your heedfulness away from you. It's all guaranteed. It's so you just cruise along. Your phone, so. You don't really pay much attention. Crash. Faith is a great guide, and when certainly when I it's not a word I was very familiar with as a young person. I thought it meant some kind of religious belief, faith in God or something like that, and I didn't have that. But I did have a sense of wanting to get out of the known and the programmed, the known, the prescribed. I thought, just this is living death. I want to get out of this. So that was my thing in a way. So I was always trying to, move around, go on the road, travel here, there, just find myself in unusual situations just to see what would it be like, And it was very, it was really quite interesting, the things you find when you like that. And I was in Afghanistan, and which is a pretty wild country, always has been, in this little town. And you look down the town, and up on the roof on the edge of the roofs, all these guys sitting there with rifles. Like, it's normal that you need a rifle to shoot somebody off the street. It's like you imagine the Wild West might be. This is the Wild East. And so I remember, I think I wanted to buy a shirt or something. I went to this bazaar, kind of, talked to some old guy. And so, but then, you didn't really buy things like just go to a store and pick something. You have to talk to the guy. And then, you've got to haggle. Otherwise, it's not really proper business. So he's got to present something. You say, oh, well, maybe. And he says, my mother made this with her own hands. And you go, well, I don't know about this, maybe. And he gives you some price. And he says, oh, no, go away. And you walk off. So the next day you come back. And you do this 2 or 3 days, you kind of get to know each other. I found that. And then after about the 3rd day of this, he said, you must come to my house. So, because we got to know each other in this process. And I went to his house in the evening, which you really, in one way, you shouldn't do. It's a very dangerous country, but I just thought, well, the guy's invited me. Went to his house, and he gave me some food to eat, and he brought out this one-stringed instrument called a ditta, and he just started playing his music and singing his song. This is rather wonderful, that kind of, you come off the road and you meet somebody opens their life up in faith. So I lived like that, and it was obviously risky, but and so then when I started, more as active faith, just meditation, sort of sign for meditation. So I'll have a go at that. It's another doorway. Open that one up, see what's in here. And then did a little bit of that. Thought, okay, well, I think I'll do some more of this. So where do I get to do this? When I go to this monastery and do it. Okay, do that. And then, well, maybe I'll stay a bit longer. So on and so on and so on. Until the next door opens. And somewhere about 45 years time later than that, somebody's saying, do a Zoom retreat. Zoom retreat? What's that? And so there's a kind of gathering of faith. You think, well, the movement is virtuous, it's integrity, it's wholesome. We'll just work with it. Mm-hmm. And then these beautiful things come around through faith. And I think this is just a lovely way to live, to keep moving along on that follow where the doors open, follow it, and meet the challenges that arise. So straight from the heart. So it's when it's not you're dragged into that because you have to. No, it's a free thing. And it's not about, other people want you to, or you should, but just because your faith arises, so you owe it to yourself to take your life back from, the ought tos and the prescribed and all that kind of stuff. So this is something is really, there's a movement forward. This is so often in meditation we're trying to almost move back, let go, let go, let go, step back. But actually that's one way of expressing it, but also there's the movement forward that in a way sends you back to your center. And in a way that's almost before the person arises, the person may feel they can't, or they're not able to, or they're not certain, but the chitta says, well, we'll just have to find out. And so the energy arises, and the energy that arises, this is the second of these faculties, the energies arises, is not panicking, it's not, this is all certain, it's not automatic energy, it's not, oh, well, we do this, 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 it's a sort of feel it out, move forward, keep negotiating. So it's associated with mindfulness, means you're sensing, you're holding a theme, and then you're meeting, no, not that, yes, this, no, not that, no, this, not that one, this one. You keep holding that mindfulness, which is the capacity to focus on the main theme and keep filtering off, skimming off, the doubt, the irritation, the confusions, the negativities or craving that arises. Because that's not the theme. This is the theme. No, negativity is not the theme. The theme is this. And so naturally, anything you do is going to bring up the conditioned mind. Easily falls into these hindrance patterns. So that's when you move through the conditioned realm, and it draws out these tendencies. Therefore, but then your mindfulness is, no, that's not what I'm doing. I'm doing this. You let go of that. And so then the mind does collect into itself, which is what samadhi is about. We tend to assume samadhi is concentrating on an object, but that's not really what it's about. Mindfulness is closer to that, but even mindfulness isn't so much concentration on an object, but focusing on a process, staying with a process in which various objects can come and go. And samadhi is the result of doing that. You really steadied in your process, you collected, steady, settled in your process. The quality of doubt is not there. The restlessness, the apathy, the craving, the aversion, they've disappeared. So you're in your process, collected way. And wisdom, panya, is the thing that you're able to scan that, your experience, and see what's there. And you realize what's coming from the heart is not so much a person or personal conditioning, but dhammas, things such as patience, kindness, equanimity, determination, resolve, ethical orientation. These are able to sail through the conditioned world, where the person's often getting stuck and falling apart or staggering or pushing. These Indriya, they're called leaders. Indra was the king of the gods. So the Buddhists obviously took that name and said, okay, well, this is going to be our God. Our leader is going to these five. These are because Indra was the victor, the conquering deity. So these are going to be our conquerors. And they're going to conquer, greed, hatred, and delusion. It's a warrior religion. That's how it's set up by, warrior mentality. So, just to encourage, because when we, use this occasion to look more intimately, and freeing ourselves from the worldly pressures of success and getting it right and worrying what other people think and all that. You're just in your own intimate space, you begin to see and recognize the programming that's been printed onto your citta, the fear, the fear of getting it wrong is one of them. And you can't live with that. You can't live with that. You can survive, but you can't live with that. You just got to let yourself get it wrong, and come through. You can't live under that tyranny. You can't live under the tyranny of the inner critic. It's just not possible. You can crawl and run, but you can't live a full life. So you're starting to, recognize that patterning, the virus that we carry, and begin to, by witness, clear it. And this is a process, say, we're trying to encourage that returning to a non-engaged basis, disengaged basis, okay, which is disengaged, doesn't mean it's oblivious. So I mentioned it again, there's the eyes are seeing, but we're not looking at anything. The ears are hearing's open, but we're not listening to anything in particular. Body's there, but we're not fiddling around touching anything. So the senses are there, but they're just held quietly and no going out. So that's called a disengaging volition from the senses. You're disengaging attention from the senses. And these are two aspects of sankhara, intention and attention. This is what builds up those activations. That is, one intends, one inclines, and one attends to details. And that means you get contact. Bam. Something feeds into you and you start getting more activation. So with disengagement, viveka is the word. Okay. Got no particular intention towards sights or sounds. It's just there they are. I'm not focused on any particular sight or sound. Attention is just light and open. So it's stable because the intention is not moving out. It's open because the attention is not narrowing in. It's not searching for something. It's not trying to find the right thing, the best one or the proper one or the one I'm supposed to be. It's not doing that. It's just open, stable. And returning to that. That itself takes some faith because this is a pretty undocumented territory. You don't see it manifesting in the world. You don't see it mentioned. Everybody's doing things and being something. And wow, yeah, getting on with it and so forth. And what are you doing? Well, I'm maintaining open presence. It doesn't sound that much of a claim. It sounds kind of, what? It sounds kind of boring. Sometimes it's boring, but I let that pass. I realize boring is not stable presence, that's negativity. So I noticed that and I disengaged from that. And it's just deep, steady, stable presence. Now you can return from that to that as best you can. And that's an act of faith because it's uncharted. What's the point of that? Find out, do it. This is the lost territory. This is the last frontier. We've been all over the planet, the bottom of the deepest ocean, the highest mountain, booming off into outer space. This is the last lost territory, and it's infinite. And there's room for everything in there, you know, because it's got no boundaries to it. It's open. Yeah. And as you most powerfully, of course, disengaging from mental consciousness, mano vijnana. That is the consciousness that's producing or manifesting as a flow of thoughts and impressions and urges and waverings and you know all this stuff. Just not disengaging from it, not averse to it, not favoring it, not comparing it, not wishing it should be another way, but just, okay, so where's that? How do you do that? Helps if you can withdraw into your inner body. Imagine, if you like, you're turning your attention back within this physical form, somewhere, maybe your lower spine. You don't have, just imagine you're making that journey back. Something you don't have a mental reading on. Right? You know, if you withdraw into your face, you'll probably think, oh, my face, wrinkly, flabby, funny skin, you know, whatever. No, you better not go there. Too much identity. So you go perhaps into your lower spine, because nobody's probably ever commented on your lower spine. And you've never been identified with your lower spine. So let's go back there. It just doesn't feel anything in particular. No. I mean, it's just a journey to make, to withdraw from the place where your mind gets very busy. You know, it gets very sensitive to these territories, these bodily territories. It's just a technique to help to produce that withdrawal from mental engagement. You could, of course, just go into the visual space or the sound, empty sound of listening. And it's just because these all mean the mind's got nothing to get any traction on. And what's that like? Well, probably difficult, because we're used to having some traction, something to get involved with. And there's this latent tendency, and the tanha, which actually tips into, well, it's doing something, remembering something, making it work, you know, old karma welling up, pushing you into memories and uncertainties and issues and what you should be doing. How's that? But then just even the inclination to withdraw to a stable center, if you don't feel you've found it, because it's not really a thing anyway. It's, you know, it's not as if there's a particular, that bit's the stable center, because it's open. It's got no boundaries. So you can't really define it other than just stable and open. Right? And then, but from there, you can notice all this mental stuff moving around. And then you're keeping your energy collected in that composure of centering. So processes are happening. And then we start to acknowledge this particular formation. It's got the flavor of irritation. This particular formation's got the flavor of the sound of feeling of restlessness. This particular formation's got the sense of judgment. Don't want those. Dispassion, patience, equanimity, and it roll. Now, as you're doing that, you know, this stable open center becomes more apparent. It's the bit that's left when the stuff rolls through. And you never know what it is, because it's not a sound, it's not a sight, it's not a feeling, it's not an impression, it's a non, a zero. But it's a very potent zero. And the Buddha, you know, unconditioned. So it's enabling one to assess the conditioned world with some wisdom rather than judgments or preconceived notions. Including, of course, most fundamentally, notions about yourself, the person, what they are or they aren't, what they should be or could be, what they never were, and so forth, whether they're liked or disliked, whether they feel accepted or not accepted. You know, just this, what's this one? This is the sound, this is the feeling of sorrow, this is the feeling of pain, this is the feeling of, you know, has to be heard, has to be felt, to be known. And through that, kindness and compassion get born. Kindness and compassion get born, not just as ideals, but as what happens when the chitta meets dukkha. And all these skillful dhammas, you know, they all arise at the place where the openness of the chitta meets the dukkha of the conditioned. The Dhamma realm opens with all the lists that you can read in Buddhist books, you know, Parami, Indriya, Bojjhangas, enlightenment factors. This is where they all arise from. Mm-hmm. And if there's, of course, which, you know, the most important is wisdom. And wisdom to know mindfulness is not present for me now. Energy is not present for me now. Faith is waning. Time to step back. Time to center. Know your measure. Know your range. The most important practical application of wisdom, to know what you can manage now, to know what the chitta can manage. We can know what's skillful and unskillful. Yeah, we can go, yeah, that's not right. We can perhaps begin to get a sense of this is the way out of suffering, but actually the speed or the, you know, the intimate process, you can only know now. So you take back the Dhamma from the book and from the teacher, and take it back into your own heart. You can't blame the book. They're not living your life. The teacher's not living your life. They can give you the themes, but then you've got to find the balance within your range. And the directions where your faith arises and your energy is present. And you know the faculties come together, the indriyas come together. It's a magical process, it's a mysterious process, but it's a sacred process, which means that it's not prescribed. And it's tremendously valuing your authenticity, your autonomy, your integrity. This is the sappurisa. It's called the person of integrity. Mm-hmm. Person of integrity attunes to virtue, attunes to practices and so forth, experiences various kinds of hindrance and various kinds of samadhi and so forth. But what doesn't happen is they don't say, this is mine. They say, this is arising now. They don't say, it's better than hers. I've got it, but she doesn't have it. Because it's not yours in the first place. Doesn't belong to the person. It's an irrelevant comment. You're taking the world, the signs of self and other are diversions. They're not on the main track. They're diversions, send you down the wrong direction. The direction of conceiving. Once you conceive of others, you conceive of yourself. And that means you've lost open presence. You're no longer in the open. You've closed. There's a closure that's occurred. Yeah. And now we're back on a personal track again. Yeah. And and it can go to some interesting places, but it doesn't go to the unconditioned because we are conditioning it, or the mind is now conditioning it into being mine. That's a condition. So this, returning and integrating is a theme in our life, the theme. It does also remind us just to keep turning the furniture over, moving things around, like, where am I going? What am I doing? And just why? This I'm supposed to. It's not good enough. Which is where we, someone of personal integrity, sappurisa, you also realize it's the path that must be followed rather than just the ideas and notions. And you've got to keep touching in with the basis of that, the faith, our centering, our centeredness, recognizing that having an open center doesn't mean it doesn't eliminate anything, because if you're practicing properly, your extensions into conditionality come from the center. As you start first, just as a Dhamma practice, you should always, well, here I am. saying what you should be. But the recommendation is your first movement of the heart has to be goodwill, because there can't be any other movements, can there? There can't be any other movement you can feel good about apart from some quality of goodwill, but it's towards yourself, your body. It's got to be that. Otherwise, everything else is driven, isn't it? Goodwill arises. You can't say, okay, now do some goodwill. It's not like a practice that you've got to concoct. Just when the heart is balanced, it opens. The opening is called goodwill. That's what it means. It means that one is willing, available. That's the opening. Right? Now, if it's compulsive, compulsion closes. Right? Compulsion's got this kind of closing state. So you can't be compulsively good-natured. It's a contradiction. You can't be compulsively open because compulsion closes and openness opens. And so so the quality of goodwill, if it's the real thing, is just this opening, willing. What am I willing for? What am I willing to say yes to? And really warm to, and feel joy and wish to know. What is that? What is that? Question. And then where does it go from there? Don't know. Follow it. The generosity, the giving. Follow it. So these are themes that we revise time and time again, because it's the difference between the chanda, the motivation, and tanha, the craving to get results. It's a pretty fine line between the two. But with chanda, with true motivation, you take the signs off the road, open the heart, move like that. And tanha's always got there, you go there, and then you get to there, and you sort of reaching, it pulled forward. Then chanda means the gift of true purpose, and we'll want to live with a sense of purpose. It's not just passing time until you pack up, And true purpose is where your faith and your chanda, your motivational energy moves. It moves through the channel of goodwill, opening. The openness stays. The openness stays. So though we can say the openness is the stable, firm center, it's the abiding quality that stays. If you're on theme, it stays. The openness stays. That's why you can return to it, because it stays with you. In what you're doing, or sometimes not doing, because things aren't open, conditions are not right yet. So I'll offer this for your consideration this time. We'll take a little break, 10-minute break, and then go into some quiet practice.
Andmayam Dhammakataya Sadhu Karam Dadamase Sadhu 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 Anumodani.
Okay. Yeah, so as where do you go from here? I don't know. So, you got anything better to do? So why don't we try just some sitting and walking for or standing for an hour or so, and then maybe we can regroup for the last 30 minutes and sit together. So take it as it feels appropriate.